Anything changed since last week?
Anything? No. I mean, I was bleeding water. No.
Yeah. When is the next meeting for the ADs?
We meet in October. Yeah, we have a normal meeting cycle. We meet every 2 weeks by video conference. So the beauty of trying to pin me down on when are you going to make a decision, we can pop on any video conference at any point.
You're way ahead of me.
And we use the video conferences to talk about a lot of issues. We'll talk about the next round of scheduling. I would predict October right now. It's been interesting to see, as I said last week, Kurt had to listen to me, that in Destin, we were poised to make a decision, and in August of 21, after the announcement of membership transition, our ADs identified Destin as the date they'd like us to know scheduling formats across the board. And then when we were in Destin, we said, well, there's a lot going on with the CFP, Big Ten media discussions, wanted to dig deeper into our tiebreaker if we go to a single division, which is clearly on the table. And we thought we'd know more, like when we gathered in August. So in mid-August, we had another in-person meeting. And we just didn't realize how much more we'd know in mid-August. And then, the September 2nd, I think that was the Friday before the season began, when the Board of Managers said, we want to go to 12. Certainly in 26, early if we can. The CFP meeting the management committee has met once. We'll meet again and again and again, probably. All of that information is important to us in this process.
You had a couple of games, Oklahoma.
That's a change. Yeah. So I guess the fact that it's public was a change. That's obviously been in the works, but those are non-conference contracts that couldn't be fulfilled on both sides. And the wise thing to do was say, you know what, those are going to be conference games. And if we pick the right format, you're going to see those with great frequency. But since we couldn't fulfill those directly, it was the right time to make the announcement because schools needed to line up.
But Texas A&M-Miami is still scheduled for next year.
Yeah, which is a pretty good sign that conference alignments are going to stay that way next year. Somebody asked me that.
Right.
Somebody speculated about 23, so I think that's a pretty good.
I thought it might have been the conference opener.
That's a pretty good, pretty good tell there. I think it's in week 2, so.
I know there's always been discussion about trying to, like you said, get the playoff done earlier. What level of urgency do you sense on that part of, A, how feasible it is, B, how much urgency is there to try to do it before 26?
The mood has changed greatly. We spent a year not really moving. And now we're moving. So that's like the Captain Obvious line, right?
Yeah.
And we had a conversation last week we met. I think the sense in the room is we're going to try to move forward sooner rather than later, but calendar, logistics, TV, interaction with schedules for other leagues and other events. The bowls would have to adjust around this expansion, whether it's the 24 season, 25 season, all of those things are real. But the fact that there's urgency, means that people are applying effort to see if we could move forward. I don't think it's an emergency. I don't sense a lot of tension and nervousness. There's a will to try. The best way to describe it.
I think you've had a consistent stance on it from the time you guys have proposed it, 12, 14 months ago. But when you say the mood has changed, was there one thing that triggered that in your opinion, or was it just a collection of,
Probably.
Yeah. Around late June.
I mean, there were things that happened last summer that were attributed as reasons.
Right.
And then there were things that happened this summer. And here we are.
Yeah.
So one of the realities is I can't be any more entertaining than that answer. One of the things that was very clear in January of 2019. So go back, when we forget the history, you go back to December of 2018, the selections for the four. We only had one in that year, but kind of consistent noise dating back to 16, 17, about who was in, who wasn't in. We need to expand, and that really came from every other conference but the Southeastern Conference. And we were pretty consistent with our message. Larry Scott was consistent about four, but representatives on the board of managers, the presidents, even from leagues where their commissioners may not have been involved, were clear. And so if you're us, you try to work through, alternatives and find, through collaboration, find compromise. I really thought we did that. That didn't produce a result. But the president at the very beginning said, after all that noise and speculation, the press release from January 2019, they were very clear that they were going to make this decision. And that's what happened. So that never really changed, but the environment changed. The president's always had said, we'll be empowered to make this decision. In January of this year, when really the process stopped, the president said, let's keep meeting as a board of managers, and they have that right. They met, I think, in March, and then in August it accelerated. And obviously a lot happened between March.
How much leeway do you need as a league to set a schedule? Like if
I was for that first part again.
I'd say 23 Texas Alabama's to be in play. So 24, if you were going to start in 24 with expanded model, which you didn't know by December.
I remember we had it in Missouri in 2011 in November. So the announcement here was in September, about a week before right now, as I recall. And Missouri was in early November, and we played in August, September. So there's your limit. We didn't have a schedule of it then either.
Yeah.
We don't want to go through that. So if by January, and there are conferences that announce their schedule in January. The real issue is if we do extend to 9 games, which is not certain by any stretch of the imagination, then the changing of non-conference games, the sooner we know, the better for everyone.
You did it with fans.
If we stay at 8, well, really, the 9 is about non-conference games. Because we're about a year ahead of announcing our schedule now. So we don't want to go to the 6 to 8 month window, 9 or 10 month like before. But we also want to use time, and I think I don't know if we're lucky or good. I think we're good, and the wisdom in waiting is shown because we have a lot more knowledge to help inform our decision.
I know at Media Days you mentioned dialogue, or you can correct my word there, on possibly uniting the entire SEC footprint in NIL legislation. Has that progressed anywhere? Is there any more dialogue on that?
We've had dialogue, if you will, but no, not at the state level. The focus really is on engaging, educating, communicating with members of Congress.
Is there a point in your mind where you would shift from federal level to state level?
If it's abundantly clear there's not going to be any congressional interest or action, but we just had a bill introduced. So you asked me about changes. Senator Wicker introduced, it's really his second introduction of a bill on name and likeness. So clearly there's interest, and that is an important piece. That's really an important piece of information to consider when we think about our strategy continuing at the congressional. There's interest.
What's your most enjoyable part about a trip here for a weekend?
The kickoff at games. I mean, the atmosphere. When I first attended as commissioner in 2015, it was the Alabama game. The airport's just packed. You walk in here, and it was just awesome. There were people all over, and I'm sitting there on the ground. Again, this was my first year. I'd been here before, but I'm the commissioner of the Southeastern Conference, and the weight of that was upon me that day. I try to break it into small parts now. So walking in at the beginning and kickoff, and I try to watch the first couple of series, and I haven't seen what's happened since. But to watch those first 2 series is really a lot of fun. And I was asked last week, I was in Austin, and people said, what a great atmosphere. And I'm like, it's familiar. We have this intensity like we experienced there, like here in the Superdome, with LSU and Florida State. Next week, Florida and Tennessee will be, remarkable. I think next week up in Dallas, neutral site, but that'll be remarkable. So that's part of the fun that we'll experience now, and we'll experience when we're in 16.
Greg, kind of when you were talking about that last week, you were in Austin to watch that intense atmosphere. When you look at a game such as the Southwest Classic in Arlington, with the new way that how we're transforming the conference, could you see it go back to more home beat home series or still neutral locations?
Well, that's a topic for the schools to determine. We have a game in Jacksonville, much like what happens in Arlington, and we honor those contracts and those dates, and they're pretty cool environments. A lot of tradition, obviously, in Jacksonville. And then, you look to the future, what happens in the Cotton Bowl Stadium between Texas and Oklahoma. So we've always worked to honor those games in a consistent way. But, I think there's a lot of change here. There's been change in the stadium in Arkansas, and the schools will have to look at what the right direction will be.
Other than playoff and stuff like that, we're in obviously a few weeks into the season. What are the other urgent issues?
It's my 9th game. We're in week 3.
That's right.
This is my 9th game, and I've seen 9 of our 14 teams. That's pretty remarkable.
From ADs, what are the most pressing issues that you're hearing from them at this point?
Well, our membership growth is top of mind. Name, image, and likeness is top of mind. The Lead One group, so the gathering of FBS ADs this week in DC, really deep conversation about should football move out of the NCAA governance structure. And you saw an announcement where what I think is a commitment to make this work. But I think we're all savvy enough to know that we're going to have to keep options open in the future. We want to make this work in the Big Tent, but there are realities when you're in a place like College Station or in Tuscaloosa or Baton Rouge that are very different from the vast majority of Division I members, and that has to be recognized. And the expectations are different. Watching what's happening, with membership around us. I tried to be clear at media days, looking at you because you remember my media days, to say, we're very focused on our growth to 16 and the special nature of the Southeastern Conference, but we're equally attentive to what's happening around us. And so when we gather, we're going to have to talk through those realities. We're going to learn from the new media deal that our colleagues in the Big Ten have struck. And that'll fill up, a day, and probably can fill up 3 days.
Greg, I'm sorry, I'm not sure if anyone asked this yet, but when looking at how there's 2 new teams coming in and the conversation of expansion and realignment, is there a certain feel among athletic directors of how they want the new alignment to be with pod forms, or is it 2 teams like East-West or something like that?
Well, the focus in football is on a single division right now, and the real debate is 8 or 9 games. That doesn't mean divisions are completely erased from our consideration, but they're not at the forefront of our thinking. Pods really doesn't work. We went deep into the pod model, and the way you'd move the groupings around, you'd have a lot of return games. So you'd have teams playing in Baton Rouge before a return game happened. We've been through some of that, and that's not something that really resonates with the fan base. And so really guide us away from it. And the focus is on the single division. And that's why when we dug into tiebreakers, where not everybody will play head-to-head like we do in divisions, we've had to think more deeply than we have with the tiebreaker that's worked for the better part of 30 years.
Is there an easy way to keep some permanent rivalries with a single division?
Oh, yeah. In fact, it's not a secret. If you play 8, you've got one permanent rival, but you're going to see your other rivals every other year, and over a 4-year period, we'll play everybody home and away. I think Missouri plays at Auburn for the first time ever next week. Georgia's never been here. Somebody can write that, because you're going to write that anyway, so I just gave it to you. When we announced the expansion, one of my observations at the very top was we need to bring teams through campuses more frequently. And I believe we're going to do that. And that's one of the advantages of the single division. Now, we can do different things in different sports. And we've got working groups on each sport. The football decision is a working group of the whole, so all 14, really 16 athletics directors. We brought Oklahoma and Texas into that conversation from our August of 21 meeting.
Turn the 3 to kick.
Hope that was interesting and
Absolutely.